When we think of the United States and Canada, the first thing that comes to mind is the iconic northern border. Long, peaceful, and the longest undefended border in the world. But what if that border wasn't just a line dividing two nations? What if some US states could, in the future, look northward for more than just trade? Could the US and Canada's relationship evolve in ways we never imagined? Let's take a deeper look. While secession or joining another country may seem like a far-fetched idea, the truth is that several US states share unique, long-standing relationships with Canada. The cultural ties, economic exchanges, and even policy alignment in areas like healthcare, education, and sustainability make the case for why some states could be on the brink of a major shift. Let's explore these states and why they might one day consider joining Canada. 1. Vermont, a natural bridge. First up, we have Vermont. Known for its stunning mountains, maple syrup, and a way of life that prioritizes simplicity and sustainability, Vermont has always had a unique relationship with Canada. Nearly 35% of Vermont's northern residents regularly use Canadian services, including healthcare, while the state's cultural and educational ties with Quebec are deeply rooted. Vermonters aren't necessarily anti-American. Instead, they align with Canadian values of a slower, more sustainable lifestyle. With its proximity to Quebec, Vermont often acts as a soft bridge between the two nations, with no clear side to take. 2. Maine, tied by trade and necessity. Next, we look at Maine, where Canada is not just a neighbour, but also a major trading partner, handling around 40% of Maine's exports. Many Mainers cross the border regularly for things like healthcare, groceries, and even basic goods. Nearly 28% of households near the Canadian border have used Canadian services in the past year. Maine's embrace of Canadian-style public services, such as healthcare, isn't about politics. It's about necessity. The state's close relationship with Canada is both practical and deeply ingrained in the fabric of daily life. 3. New Hampshire, independent spirit, Canadian influence. New Hampshire has long been known for its independent spirit, and that attitude extends to its increasing reliance on Canadian systems. From healthcare to education, nearly half of New Hampshire's northern residents have interacted with Canadian services in the past year. As US healthcare costs rise, New Hampshire communities have turned to Canada for guidance, embracing more sustainable governance models. For many in New Hampshire, the idea of independence now includes a smart adoption of Canadian models that better meet their needs. 4. Washington, a borderless economy. On the West Coast, Washington State has built a relationship with Canada based on logic, not emotion. Over 72% of Washington's port exports go to Western Canada, particularly British Columbia. Cities like Seattle and Vancouver share more than just a border. They share regular exchanges in education, healthcare, and even business. Washington's commitment to sustainability mirrors Canada's, and their governance models align in many ways. The relationship here isn't driven by cultural or political affinity, but by practical, infrastructural needs. 5. Oregon, green tech and shared values. Oregon is another state increasingly aligning with Canada, especially in the areas of green tech and sustainability. Trade between Oregon and Canada grew by 20% in just 3 years, and Portland has started implementing urban policies inspired by Canadian cities like Victoria. Oregon residents, many of whom already embrace Canadian lifestyles focused on sustainability, often see themselves as part of a larger shared identity that extends beyond borders. In fact, French is now commonly taught in Oregon schools to open career pathways in French-speaking Canada. 6. Minnesota, shared winters, shared needs. Minnesota's northern residents already rely heavily on Canadian healthcare during short visits, with 22% of them accessing services north of the border. The harsh winters and rural lifestyle blur the lines between the two countries, with people prioritizing reliable healthcare, education, and cost of living over nationalism. For many, the consistency offered by Canada is seen as a necessity rather than a choice. 7. Michigan, a quiet Canadian rhythm. In Michigan, 45% of the state's exports head to Canada, primarily to Ontario. Cities like Detroit and Flint are rebuilding their economies, often in parallel with Canadian cities, and many Michiganders have already adopted a Canadian-aligned way of life. In southern Michigan, residents frequently compare the Canadian systems of healthcare and education with their own, realizing that Canada's models may be better suited to their needs. 8. Northern New York, shared borders, shared values. In the northern parts of New York State, more than 700 kilometers of border stretch between the U.S. and Canada. Around 60% of residents in these northern counties feel a stronger alignment with Canadian values, especially in areas like public health, education, and environmental care. Regional identity in these areas is increasingly shaped by shared habits, and residents often look north for solutions to the issues they face. 9. Alaska, a self-sufficient identity. Alaska, though distant, shares a deep connection with Canada, especially in terms of trade. Around 60% of Alaskan goods travel through British Columbia and Yukon, and many Alaskans rely on Canadian supply chains and services. The state's borderline self-sufficient identity aligns more with Canadian logistics than US infrastructure, creating an odd sense of unity with its northern neighbors. 10. California, honorable mention, seeking stability. Finally, we have California. While not likely to secede anytime soon, there's a growing trend among younger Californians to consider Canadian options. The high cost of living and rising healthcare expenses are pushing many to look north. Additionally, university and tech collaborations with Canada are expanding rapidly. For some, the Canadian model offers stability and sustainability, two things increasingly hard to find in the Golden State. While this analysis isn't advocating for secession, it does bring up an important question. Could these deepening cross-border ties be a threat or an opportunity? Are we witnessing the beginning of a more integrated North American continent where the lines between the US and Canada begin to blur in ways that benefit both nations? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. These states are already moving toward a future that reflects shared goals of sustainability, healthcare, education, and economic growth. So, could these states break away and join Canada? It's a question that might seem distant, but the answer may not be as far-fetched as it once seemed. Let's keep watching and see how these cross-border connections evolve. Thanks for watching.